Welcome, man. Star Wars News Net here with Paul. Welcome back to Star Wars News Net. It's good to have you, sir.
Yes, I'm glad to be back, Tyler. It's been too long. I know we tried to do
Yes.
something like right before you went back to school or to work, and life just got crazy for both of us. But I'm glad
Right.
we have a reason to reconnect because I've missed talking with you, my friend.
Yes.
We've talked here or there, but I'm glad we're sitting down and talking about something that I think pretty important.
Yeah, it's this Hunt for Ben Solo story is just absolutely Miguel for Star Wars News Net put it this way, and I think that kind of frames it really well. It felt like the entire release the Snyder cut movement in like a span of 4 or 5 days. Like just everything that happened from flying
Yeah.
planes over Disney headquarters, the billboards, New York Times, like everyone's dropping, their takes. Bob Iger's Instagram just being absolutely inundated and flooded with Ben Solo content and comments.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
been an insane week in Star Wars. And every year there seems to be like a November Star Wars surprise. Like last year we had the Simon Kinberg trilogy. The year before that was about, Carrie and Dave taking over for Kennedy soon. And so maybe this is a little early, but this certainly qualifies, and we'll see what else pops up. But I can't wait to cash into really, some of the things about the story that we found most compelling. But the most important question that I really wanted to have you on to talk about was, why is this the
Mhm.
movie that we need, as Star Wars fans, and, frankly, like maybe the IP needs? Because I'm not fully convinced on that, but I have a feeling you will help me get there during this conversation, possibly. So
Hope
how does
so.
that sound, sir?
That sounds great, my friend. That sounds great. So let's get started.
Okay. Well, before we dive into that, there's
Oh,
two things that I want to hit on. Number one, though, is, are you looking forward to Vision season 3 next week?
Oh, absolutely. I see. I'm so out of the loop. I don't even know when it's being released. Is Vision
A
season
week
3? It's
from,
not the ninth. Yeah, go
actually,
ahead.
wait, not next week. It's in 2 days. Sorry. I was like, I'm out of it too. It's 2 days from now, Wednesday, the
It's
29th.
not the Ninth Jedi, though, right?
No, that I believe that series is going to come out next year. And then this is just a full season 3 of Visions with,
Okay.
I believe there might be a Night Jedi like episode in there.
Well, that's right. Yeah, yeah. There's something there. So, because the Ninth Jedi is goated, in my opinion. It's my favorite of the Vision series. I think it captures everything about Star Wars that I love. So I'm excited. I mean, listen, I didn't love Vision season 2 as much as season 1, but I really liked season 2 elements of it. Like I think it's really refreshing to see
Mhm.
different perspectives of Star Wars. From different creators and not have like the constrictions. And and as someone who loves canon, who loves to have the continuity all be one, I do think there is something to be said about having um not beholden and to
Mhm.
be tampered down with continuity and all that jazz. But because I think what you can do is I've said this before on countless podcasts, either on the side of continues or on your guys' show or here or whatever, but I do feel like you could kind of learn what Star Wars can do and what it's capable of by experimenting in that realm, like the
Mm.
Ninth Jedi, for instance, and you kind of see what people kind of latch on to, and you can kind of say, hey, maybe we can incorporate this in canon.
Mhm.
Not saying the Ninth Jedi is going to be canon by any means, but you get what I'm saying. Like you can kind of
But at
understand, like,
least bring out like they're doing that full-fledged series for it and saying like, oh, people really latched onto this story. Let's go ahead and give them some more of this particular,
yeah,
run-of-the-mill story.
or the kind of stories that people are getting into
Mhm.
through there. I
Right.
think that to me is what they should probably use Visions as, to be quite
Mhm.
honest, is like to see, what kind of Star Wars stories are the hardcore fan base gravitating towards? Because
Mhm.
to me, in my opinion, the more you feed, and at least within reason, of course, the more you feed the hardcore fan base, the more excited they're going to be, and the more excited they're going to be talking about it. And then people who are the
Yeah.
average, casual fans are saying, well, what's this whole thing about this new Star Wars series
Right.
everyone keeps talking about, whatever. I mean,
Mhm.
and like, obviously it's kind of, snowballs from there. So I feel like
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost not a requirement, but it's almost like it should be a regular thing they do just to kind of test the waters on certain kinds of
Mhm.
stories. But they're not like wasting a bunch of money on like movies and we'll get into that in a minute. If Disney
Right.
is not confident in what's going on. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I love
Okay.
Visions.
Well, I will always have a soft spot for Visions, even if it's not my thing, because Vision season 2 is what first brought us together, Paul. That was the
Was
first
it?
show that we ever
Wow.
did together. Was I had not seen Visions 2. You wanted to do a Visions review, and you needed someone to you wanted someone to review it with, but I was like, I hadn't seen it. So you're like, what if I give you like a brief synopsis or look at each episode and you could like see which ones you're most likely to go watch. And I did go watch, and
Okay.
I feel like I was thinking about that the other day as I was kind of getting ready for Visions season 3. I was thinking back on that. So I was like, I will always have
That's awesome.
a soft spot for Visions.
Awesome.
Which it's
Awesome. That's
ironic that
awesome.
we would be doing this show 2 days before Vision season 3. It's
Perfect.
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 It's like George,
Perfect.
it's like poetry. It rhymes, right?
It
So
rhymes.
that
Yeah.
was number 1. I have one more thing for
Okay.
you before Hunt for Ben Solo.
What?
I thought of you. This is a few weeks over the last few weeks. I have been reading the new Star Wars book, The Last Order. It came out a week
Mhm.
ago tomorrow, like a week
Mhm.
ago tomorrow, so like last Tuesday. And for the last month, I've kind of been slowly pouring through that. Wasn't a huge fan, and I know that you're not super into the High Republic. And we had a publishing conversation, and I was saying how I love the High Republic. You were talking about how if you weren't, and I think the thing that you really were harping on in that particular conversation was that if you're not a fan of the High Republic or it's not your thing, there's really no significant hard-hitting, lore like canon stories out there to bring in other people, because they were telling like these little one-off stories, like here's an Obi-Wan
Right.
Padawan story, but nothing where it's like we're not doing anything of consequence for the canon, for the
Yeah.
publishing initiatives, unless you're just a hardcore High Republic fan. Because if you love the High Republic, it's like, of course it is. It's these big stories. But if
Sure.
you weren't in that field, it wasn't doing that. And so the High Republic is over, and it finished up in over the summer. And this was the
Mhm.
first Star Wars book, The Last Order. Are you familiar with like what the premise of The Last Order is
I
or anything about it?
I I know it takes place after the Rise of Skywalker. It
Mm-hmm.
sucks because I've been so out of loop with Star Wars as far as like the
Mm-hmm.
publishing side. I honestly I just go to Star Wars Newsnet and read
Mm-hmm.
about like when they go to like the Comic Con and like I read the
Yeah.
New York Comic Con update because I still have my canon shelf which is unkept and I have a bunch of like books I haven't bought yet. Like that's one of
Mm-hmm.
them. The last like 3 I haven't bought, but I got
Yeah.
a bunch of like the trade paperback comic books coming in right now, like the Kylo Ren one, which I haven't read any of
Yeah.
the Kylo Ren comic book, which I'm excited to read finally.
Mm-hmm.
So that's coming in hopefully in a couple weeks.
Nice.
But yeah, like I haven't I'm a little
Mm-hmm.
behind. I know there's a Darth Vader book coming out in a couple weeks
Yes.
too. Which I'm interested in that because
Mhm.
I love
So
Vader. So
so the last order, let me just tell you that the synopsis of this book was after the events of the Rise of Skywalker, Finn and Jaina are together and they are trying to eliminate, last remnants of the First Order while reconciling with their past as
themselves.
stormtroopers.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Well,
so
that's solid
going
premise.
into this book, I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be exciting. We have like the first book taking place after episode 9, and we're following two, main characters from episode 9, especially Finn, who I really want to get to know like more
Yeah.
about.
Same.
What is he thinking after the Battle of Exegol? Has he talked with
Mhm.
Rey more? Has he explored that like force sensitivity side? Has he even like what is going on in his brain? Like how has he processed the events that have happened?
Right.
And I feel
Right.
like all of those things could be
Aren't
accomplished
even in the book.
without really getting into anything. Now, not only did none of this happen, Paul, what if I told you that 85% of the book are
Oh
just the
no.
flashbacks of Jaina and Finn training as stormtroopers? And when when
No.
you are in the present timeline, it doesn't even follow
Oh.
Finn and Jaina's perspective. There is a random new character that's brought in, which is fine. I like new characters, right? But when you barely spend any time in the present timeline, it's impossible for me to really care about this new character. And then essentially what happened was this book, this is my opinion, my review for it for Star Wars News actually went out today, and I basically said it's a fine book, but when you essentially marketed it as the first book after the Rise of Skywalker, and none of the book takes place after the Rise of Skywalker, it's like, are you kidding me? And it reminded me, because like this is a book that should have come out right before the movie, and it's like, hey, here's the backstory of Finn as a stormtrooper, and here's this new character Jaina that you're gonna get to know.
Novelty, right?
Like,
Novelty.
boom.
Yeah.
And it really made me, I was thinking back as I'm reading this, like, this is exactly what Paul was talking about when we had this conversation about a year ago, and how these books are coming out that are fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with the books. It's just they're not adding any like real depth or any layers to the canon or the lore and anything like that. And I was like, that is exactly what you were talking about. It reminded, I was thinking about you in that one. And then I was thinking, man, I really hope that Master of Evil with Vader and Palpatine can do some of that, or like the Star Wars Legacy book with Rey and Leia can do something like that. But honestly, but we're few and far between right now. And so I was thinking about that. It was very disheartening reading that book. It was hard to get through it.
Yeah. No. I'm glad you kind of are seeing what I'm saying. I mean, I thought you saw what I was saying last time too, but I think like you understand the problem Star Wars is in right now. It's a ship without a rudder, and I think from a narrative standpoint of who's guiding it, and I think that it's great because the Mandalorian, I feel like they've been really, really careful with that, and I think that's. I know they had books that were canceled because of that whole situation. Forgot her name, for God's sake. Oh my God. But like, stuff like that. But the thing is, it sucks because the Mandoverse, they've been pretty like, it's a pretty like tight knit thing. I feel like you could do like a fun, like, I don't think a novel would be great with it, to be honest, but I feel like there's like a good like comic book like side quest with the Mando before he met Grogu. You could do it like a fun 6-issue, just Mando whooping ass on somebody. I mean, that's like
with that. I think of like that team that he reunited with briefly in season 1.
Yeah,
that turned on like something like that.
Yeah, something like that, right? Like nothing consequential to the story going forward, or Mando, just a fun like whatever, right? Stuff like that, it'd be fine. What I'm trying to get at is the fact that like the overall, but the problem is because the sequel trilogy, whether you like it or not, whether you like sequel trilogy or not, that's what I'm saying, is because it was such a mismatched, or what do you want to call it? How I would say that, Frankenstein thing, which it works for me ultimately in the end, as I've said before, just for the record, if you don't know. But the thing is, because it's a Frankenstein story, there's no true like George Lucas over top of it. And because Kathleen Kennedy is, again, it's not a dig at Kennedy, she's not a creative. She's not a a person who is going to be like, know where these characters are going. She has no idea what the hell they're going. She just goes, writers, help me. What are they doing? And because Rey is in like this weird limbo, they have no idea where she's going either, it sounds like, which we'll get to that in a minute. With Ben Solo, there's no real thing of where the sequel trilogy characters are going. Maybe Simon Kinberg knows, maybe he doesn't. Again, we'll get in that in a second. But I feel that's the problem. I think the High Republic was a good example of having a at least a group of people kind of overseeing everything and kind of where it all fits together.
They knew exactly the story that they were trying to tell.
Yeah.
Like when I've interviewed a couple of those authors, and they've all said the same. Like, we had a very clear where we wanted to start, and we pretty much knew exactly how we wanted to end. And then they started filling in the things in the middle like really well. And the point that you were making about the publishing initiative, I think now that the High Republic ended once the summer was over, and I was looking to the next Star Wars books, and this was like the first one I read that has come out since then, and it really kind of opened my eyes more to like, well, this thing I was so focused on that I loved is gone, and now I'm left with what was left. And there's just there's not much, it's slim pickings right now, but maybe there's hope for the future.
Well, and I think this is what we're going to talk about here in a second is a great example of the problem that Star Wars is in, and it's lacking leadership
Mhm,
from on top, which we'll get
mhm.
to, but which I do think that kind of all coincides because here's the problem. When you don't know what your main stories are going to,
Yep.
Tyler, you can't tell what the ancillary material underneath it needs to do it because the
Mhm.
ancillary material should be propping up the material that's on top of
Yep.
it. It should be like the people, like we all thought the stuff that we were getting the little morsels from the Force Awakens, books and things like that, which there were a little bit, but because JJ was so like no 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 no, you couldn't get that much, but we were so desperate. But
Right.
if you think of it from this point, whatever they're going, if let's say it's Kimberg or Soderbergh or whatever, Adam, whatever, whoever's doing it, they need to have like them understand when you're getting involved in this stuff, there's the stuff underneath it. Like
Mhm.
I mean, and Dave Filoni hasn't really done anything with this stuff either. So I wouldn't say Dave Filoni's great at it either because he's kind of
Mhm.
whatever. But I think they really need to look at and see what can we give you to help us tell our story and
Yep.
have the writers have that in mind and or not have it in mind because I don't want to limit them either, but at least to have them like be responsible for helping develop that part two,
Yeah.
because that I think is the key. Having
Mhm.
people who are on top helping develop it as well and
Mhm.
having a say, not just a say, but like having like it's part of their responsibility. That's the key, the
Mhm.
responsibility. So
Gotcha.
anyway,
Well, which that brings us to the main point of the conversation is which is the hunt for Ben Solo, but really a look at why is this the movie that we need? And I'll be honest, I am up to the point where I started off like going, I don't really think that that was a good idea. Like I think it's probably a good idea they didn't do that. I think it would have been something we looked at in a few years and be like, yeah, that probably wasn't smart. To where I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I I do think that this I would be fine with them taking this over and bringing it back into production. To where I'm at right now is, I'm kind of hoping that that happens, but where I'm not at yet, and I
good.
wonder if we can get there by the end of this episode with me. And I think, you are the person to take on that task is convincing me to go beyond what I think a lot of fans is where they're at right now is they want this movie, but why
Yeah.
do we need this movie? Like, why is this a movie that they should prioritize over? We have Starfighter in production. There's Ray movies that are out there. There's Dawn of the Jedi movies that are out there. Kimberg's working on a trilogy. There's a lot of, projects in the works, so to speak. And there's a number,
Mhm.
like with Star Wars, there are countless ideas that they could come up with, countless stories that they could tell, where the options are endless. But why is the hunt for Ben Solo? Like, why is that project the one that we need above all else right now?
Well, I think one of the things that I want to really discuss is, for one thing, I think when you have someone basically, let's put it this way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Adam Driver, Kylo Ren is the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the sequel trilogy that Obi-Wan Kenobi was the prequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Universally loved despite whatever you don't like about those movies. Everyone loved Adam Driver's Ben Solo slash Kylo Ren.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it, everyone, I mean, and I would say Ray is borderline that way too, but like because you have the idiots on the other side who are like, no, 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 no,
Right.
whatever, yeah, those idiots. But like, whatever, I digress. But like, I'd say people liked her too for the most part, but even those other idiots loved Adam Driver,
Mm-hmm.
and I think everyone can get behind Adam Driver and Kylo Ren, right, in some form of
Absolutely.
capacity.
He's the
So
most
I think
well developed or probably most interesting, character. And just when he probably got his most interesting, he died.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say so. I would say so too. And so sorry, I'm getting Steven Soderbergh's filmography up here, and I just so many things I forgot what he's done. It's crazy.
It's a
Um,
good list.
yeah. So, so yeah, I think that's the biggest one right off the top, because when you have a character that people are gung ho for, like Kylo Ren and Ben Solo, And then I look at Obi-Wan and that Obi-Wan series doing just gangbusters numbers on, despite I think the quality, unfortunately, not being as good as I wanted it to be. Even though I still love the Obi-Wan series, it if that series was amazing, like or pretty damn good from top to bottom, without I think, and to be honest, I think COVID really hurt that series. But again, I digress. I think you
Yeah,
probably have a
COVID
lot.
plus Solo not performing well, and then pivoting completely on, everything that they were trying to do. Disney takes those hard pivots more than really any other
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah, because I mean, like, so I think that you look at that and see how, like, when you look at the critical reaction to that series, or or not the critical reaction, excuse me, but I think the numbers, the viewership numbers it did, I know it
Mhm.
did really, really well,
Right.
from what I understand. So that being said, that it shows you that there's an audience for that. And I think that is just, when you have people, and all of the memes about Ben Solo, or not Ben Solo, but Obi-Wan Kenobi, but Ben Solo has, in Kylo Ren has the same things. How many high top pants memes are out there? How many gifts do you see people going more, or
Right.
whatever? Like, how many you see tons of Kylo Ren gifts out there from SNL or whatever. He is in the zeitgeist of he is Star Wars. When you think of Disney Star Wars, you think of Mando, Grogu, and probably Kylo Ren and Rey. Like,
Mhm.
maybe not in that order. Maybe, and maybe more so Grogu and Mando now. But if you think of the sequel trilogy, you think Kylo Ren immediately.
Mhm.
I mean, like Rey and Kylo Ren, first things. So I feel like you're playing with house money in a way, I think, here, that from a character standpoint, that alone is worthwhile to really look and see what you have. So that
Mhm.
alone shows you there's value there. So
So
that's
I
that's
I
one.
feel you in terms of like the value, right? But
Right.
where I don't get on board completely with why we need it, and from that standpoint, is because there's plenty of ways that I believe Star Wars can, boom, create value out of thin air. Like, there are so many storylines that they could go to
Sure.
and create just insane value. I mean, Mandalorian and Grogu was a worldwide phenomenon,
Yeah.
overnight essentially, because boom, Grogu exists. And so, is Star Wars need Ben Solo? Does it need Adam Driver? Like, I don't know if I really get there. Like, I think
Well,
Star Wars is bigger than that character.
I no, I agree. But that was just the first thing, because I
Okay.
think the character has value, right? I'm building my
Absolutely.
case here. Let me build my case. So character has value, and then we all agree there. Like, we would love to see more of the character one way or another, whether it be flashbacks or whatever,
Probably the
right?
one people want to see the most of. And I love Ray, but that's my favorite character of the sequel trilogy, which was Ray.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Ben Solo said one word. And I would love to see more Ben Solo.
But okay, I just want to just also say actually loved that he never said one word.
Mhm.
I thought that was a creative, brilliant choice, because if you have Ben say a bunch, it just kind of like, what's he gonna say? Because he has a lot to. Because again, he has a lot to make up for.
Mhm.
He's done a lot of bad things, and what's he gonna do? Like, I'm good now. Like, he doesn't know what to say, right?
That's
Like, he's
fair.
just kind of like, and I think there's a lot of there. I think that was a creative decision. Maybe I'm wrong. It feels like that was a
Mhm.
creative decision, probably on JJ and
That's a good point.
Adam Driver's part. And I actually really like that he doesn't, like,
Mhm.
he just doesn't know what to say. So, uh,
That's a good point. No,
which
that's a good
leads
point. I
which
like that.
which leads me also to this, that I think that you have the character has value. The other thing that you want to all, which Ewan McGregor also demonstrated, was that, again, the parallels between Obi-Wan and Kylo Ren here are pretty interesting, because I had no idea that Adam Driver, one, even cared about this. And we
That's a
all
big
knew
thing.
Ewan loved the character. So the fact that Adam Driver I thought he was like,
I'm good.
bye, I'm good. Like, I'm gonna be just the best actor working right now. Um, Went super secret
Mhm.
and felt that he had unfinished business with the character, is showing you that he feels something for the character. Now, I talked about on the show a lot too. They also want to get paid. He probably looking for a good payday too. Let's be
been a
real.
while.
But
But at the
but
time,
no.
that they were doing this, that wasn't necessarily the case either.
Well, I mean, I don't know. See, I don't know the timeline though. But bear with me.
20
Here's the
apparently it
thing.
was like nixed completely in 2021.
God, I hate
That's what I
people.
read.
So what? But I think what? Well, there's something. There's gotta be some more information because there's no way that all of a sudden there's a full on blitz from all these guys, which we'll get that in a second
Well, that's
too.
when we put on that tinfoil hat, we could start coming up with
I
our
mean,
conspiracy
I
theories. I
mean,
got a few.
well, yeah. I mean, listen, everyone's gonna have conspiracy theories, but I think everyone can agree it's no coincidence that all of a sudden that they're openly talking about this, and you have people who worked on the script, who worked on art,
Mhm.
like everyone's talking about it. Why? Why are they talking about it? And if they like nothing's leaking story wise,
Mhm.
so they're putting the push on Disney for a reason. We'll get that in a second.
Mhm.
But anyway, so the fact that Adam Driver had kept a secret for so long and no one knew about it,
Right.
and it got as far as it did, and he's just now announcing it and talking about it, there is that shows me that I saw the quote that he had unfinished business with the character. It just shows that he cares in
Mhm.
some form or fashion. And that means a lot because how many people don't give an F about their characters? They just want a payday or whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, there's legitimate, you could tell he cares about the character and something's not sitting well with him that enough to where he got Steven effing Soderbergh on board to direct this goddamn movie. That is not, listen, Traffic, the Ocean's movies, like this dude has done he's won Academy Award. This guy is not just gonna make a Star Wars movie for the hell of it to no, I guess I'll make a Star Wars movie. Like he Adam Driver and him
Right.
developed this thing. Like that is not just grabbing some rando off the street, dude, and just be like,
Absolutely.
this guy I got my brother to do the direct the movie. No. He got a legitimate director to do it. So the fact that you have someone who cares that much to get a name like Soderbergh,
Yeah.
that shows you care about the project. So that to me also shows that there's something there in the story that is worth telling if the
Mhm.
guy who played the character is dying to get to it. So that's second point.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I get it. But again, it comes down to there's really only one reason for me that I feel like we need this, and I still want to be sold on like this is the story that needs to be told through that reason. I'm just curious if you'll touch on it.
Sure.
Or actually, I'll let you know because I want to
Good.
get your thoughts
Good.
on it. It was the only, and Miguel brought this to my attention, then I went and watched the video. Was Alex Damon of Star Wars Explained? He explained. He talked about how Ben Solo's journey of atonement would be worth exploring because Star Wars really hasn't done that on a saga film. Like we have the Vader redeemed arc, and then he dies, and then Ben Solo, he does this, he's redeemed. This is someone who's committed, horrible atrocities across the galaxy. And sure, like he's come back to the light side and he's good again, right? But what does that mean for everyone else around him? What does that mean for Rey? What does that mean for Ben trying to re-enter the world? And there's so many different stories that they could tell about, how he could atone for whatever or what that story would look like. But to me, that's the one way that I kind of get on board that, like, hey, this is a movie that we need from a story perspective, which is Ben Solo on the journey of atonement. But I still am not sold that like that story of atonement, like this has to be through Ben Solo as much as I want it.
I think those are all great points. I think the thing that what makes it interesting is it's the hunt for Ben Solo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so everyone knows he's alive. That to me is fascinating because everyone knows he's dead. Why are they hunting for him?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe that's just the working title too. I mean, whatever. I mean, like
So
it
I
is.
interpret it as many different ways. So like my immediate thought goes to this this movie, I think of Soderbergh too. He's so well known for being able to make these. He films so much on like his phone, right? And he's able
Mhm.
to create these like movies that look amazing, but on a much lower, budget, a smaller
Yeah.
scale, but
Yeah.
they still feel like larger than life. My my immediate thought when I heard The Hunt for Ben Solo, I went straight to the dyad, and I'm thinking
Hell yeah,
Ray
dude.
feels that connection to Ben somehow. Like there's something calling her that he's
Oof.
still there,
Love it.
and it's
Loving
just
this.
a Ray and Ben movie. Like it's just the two of them, and she's like in the physical world trying to search for him. There's a location she has to find, like similar how Luke went searching for the first Jedi temple, but it's more this like spiritual force journey that she's on. While Ben, because of this dyad, this connection that's like life itself, he's in like the netherworld of the force, or like a world between worlds type place where he's
Love it.
stuck and he has to get back, and his is like the spiritual journey of atonement. And my big thing was, this is the easiest way in the world for Star Wars to have this brand new story where you have half the movie taking place in some sort of like spiritual realm, and then you have Rey in the physical world, and she has to choose to enter that realm to bring him back, and like she's hunting for him. And then Ben Solo, in a way could be hunting to release Ben Solo, like he's hunting for himself. Like who is he if he is not,
Yeah.
Kylo Ren anymore? So I thought that would be a great way. And of course, and you can easily, without nostalgia baiting people, work in characters like Hayden as Anakin, as Vader, because of how prevalent that is to Kylo's timeline. You mentioned some of the parallels between Obi-Wan, Kylo. That to me is what I like when I heard Hunt for Ben Solo. I immediately was just like, you have to build upon the dyad that you created. Like that's the only way that works
Yes.
in my brain.
Build
And
on the canon. Yeah,
yeah,
I
that's
agreed.
the only way that this works in my brain. But like the fact that, like, do we need this movie? Like, is this what is going to unite the Star Wars fandom and send the Star Wars fandom
Yeah.
like, hey, we have now crossed the threshold into the new era of Star Wars, right?
So you brought up some great points, man. And I think the dyad thing is probably one of the easiest ways to get him in the
Mhm,
world. To be honest, a couple things. Um, first of all, the movie you'd have to have an antagonist that's actually in the like a legitimate dark side antagonist, because to me, like this movie has a lot of potential to really go deep in the dark side and in the force. And I think that's what we need, to be honest, because
mhm,
we haven't got a lot of it. I think people love that stuff.
mhm.
People love The Empire Strikes Back because of the spiritualness of the movie, right? We love Revenge of the Sith because of all the different things of the dark side, the Palpatine and Anakin and what that represents. There's so, and again, is hardcore fan base, but I mean, again, you throw Adam Driver, Kylo Ren in a movie, casuals are going to show up. Like that's
Yeah.
regardless, right? Like that's,
Mhm,
so just know, like you don't have to win the casuals over. I think they're already gonna be won over because they love Kylo Ren. Like, well, how's he alive? Like, how we gotta find out? Whatever.
mhm,
So I think from a standpoint from Star Wars, I think one great point about how does someone be redeemed like a Vader or a Kylo Ren, right? How does
mhm.
that work in the Netherworld? I think Filoni did a great job of it already in Ahsoka, to be quite honest with you. It's brilliant. You could go even deeper with Kylo Ren, and I think that like there is a great redemption. Like what happens to that like person, like when they have to be held responsible for all those things. Like
Mhm,
I think that's where probably, if I'm being honest, Adam Driver and Soderbergh are probably really going hard at, is like how do we get the redemption, but also how does someone identify and cope with what they've done, kind of a
mhm,
thing, once they're gone back and like they understand everything from a
mhm.
different level. Like what does that do to someone when they're back in the real world? Like there's a lot of really interesting, I think, emotional, what's the words I'm looking for, the human condition, that
Mm.
whole idea of like where does that go? And I think that's what they're probably focused on, but
Yeah.
which I think is worth telling in any story,
Mhm,
first of all. So I think that's interesting. So I think Alex from Star Wars Explained is on the money on that. But what I will say, I think if I'm going from a hardcore Star Wars nerd aspect, I think we need this movie because, like you said, there's too much left on the bone after the Rise of Skywalker that I love. I love the dyad. I
Mhm.
love all the things they introduced. Where does Rey go from here? This movie could be the ultimate trajectory for where the new Jedi Order goes
Mhm.
from this movie, that you don't have to
Mhm.
focus on it in this movie.
Mhm.
You can kind of lay the groundwork of like Ben being like, Ray, this is what you have to learn from. Like I've seen it all. Like we're connected forever because we're the dyad, but like this is what's gonna like not what's gonna happen, but this is what you have to watch out for. And
Yeah.
like and then there, and through that, I think you can introduce the idea, which I think is too good to do, not to do. You could introduce maybe a dark side from another word comes out. Like maybe like Ben comes out because his redemption, for his physical redemption, will be I not just reviving Ray, but I have to go out there and save the universe from or the galaxy from a giant dark side threat that's out there that
Mhm.
is going to destroy everything. And if I
Mhm.
don't get out there, if I can convince if I can get out there because I use my connection with Ray and we can team up and we can defeat this evil, which could be maybe Plagueis. Maybe Plagueis is still alive. Whatever, right?
Mhm.
You could, or if it's Darth Bane or something like whatever, right? You incorporate whatever. I know people not literally, but you get what I'm saying. Some
Mhm.
ancient evil, which I think should have been already what the sequel trilogy should have been. It should have been an ancient evil besides Palpatine that's out there. I
Right.
still think Plagueis should have always been, to me, in my opinion, like the be all, because that would have been the ultimate connector of everything. But I digress.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, it
but
was
like
a whole, "Oh, we gotta stay away from tying too much to prequel trilogy stuff," and then, all that kinda
but
jazz.
that's
But
dead.
so
Thankfully, that's
so
dead
what
now.
I think would make the hunt for Ben Solo stand out from an antagonist perspective is I honestly don't want any sort of like I want this to be a very limited story in terms of this is just a
Agreed.
character study of Ben, character study of Ray, and the antagonist there. This is gonna sound wonky. I think you will actually really appreciate this because I think you really get into the wonky spiritual aspects of the Force.
I do.
I think
I
if
do.
the Force itself was the antagonist, and not in a way that the Force is evil or something, but no, it's
Sure.
like Ben is in the netherworld and he's going through like his trials, so to speak. And the Force itself is like how like a Padawan would go through his their trials to become a knight. Like Ben is going through his trials to become a Jedi, to be redeemed, and he like the Force is testing him in that netherworld. He has to endure and continue to push forward and prove like you deserve to come back. While Ray is also having to, she's going into these like force nexus locations that are also going to test her resolve and test her to where they are reunited for that third act. And you can have like a physical being in that nether world, but what I wouldn't want from this is like this is going to set up like the next villain. It would be more of like,
No.
hey, you
Right.
finished this and now your slate is like clean. You've brought these two characters back together, and the options now are endless for them to help lead another generation to take on the threats that exist elsewhere. I just love the idea of how like when they go to Mortis and in the
Yes.
in the in the Clone Wars, and you have this very spiritual sense of what Anakin has to go through and what we learn there. If something like that was, the antagonist to a Ben Solo and Rey having to figure out where she belongs, obviously not Mortis itself. I'm not saying Mortis itself, but something
Yeah.
along those lines. To me, that just adds a whole nother element. It's something we've never seen from a Star Wars movie, which and that story that we'd be telling about these two characters is also something we've never seen from a Star Wars movie, and it all connects those threads.
I mean, I wish I knew where this is the very, very basics of the premise, because I don't know. I think my issue with that though, Tyler, is that the general audience would be like, "What the hell are we watching?" Like it'd be
See,
really
I
hard for
I
them to grasp it.
disagree. I think as long as your story is sound, if your story is sound, because people loved, for the most part, that World Between Worlds episode with Ahsoka. You know what I mean? Like they loved the fact that you
Right,
had that. You could
but if
easily
you
do something like that for Ben. Like this is like his
have a whole
trials. It could
movie
be
about
flash.
it,
Yeah,
I
absolutely. If
just
you're going
I
between two characters,
I
absolutely.
don't think so. I don't think so. I think there has to be. a reason. I mean, like, again, there has to be a reason for Ben to be to come alive, and a reason for him to be in the real world, and you have to have like a physical conflict, because this is still aimed at mainstream audiences, and still children to an extent. I don't think it's way too heady, and which I love.
See,
I
I
love
think
those
people want
ideas.
Ben to be alive, and if we're watching a movie, The Hunt for Ben Solo, to bring him back, to bring him alive, like that has to tie together to the diet, has to tie together Rey and Ben. You
I
have to
agree.
explain
I
this
agree
deep
with that.
emotional connection that they have that you really
But you are
solidified in The Rise of Skywalker. And I think
yeah,
people
you've
would
done
love
it.
a smaller character study of those characters, as long like if the story feels big and you have these epic clashes featuring lightsabers using the Force, like, and in this spiritual realm, something that they have audiences haven't seen before. I'm not saying you're giving a Mortis. You can make it very real world like. I'm not saying there's floating
No, no,
people all around.
no. I got you. No, no. Listen, as someone who loves that stuff, I just don't know if you'd want to base the whole movie off of that. I think that should be an element of it for sure. I love that idea. I think that goes without saying. I just don't know if you can make a whole movie based upon that. That's what I'm saying. I think you'd have to have some kind of antagonist that's not just, unless it was an art project on Disney Plus. That's the only way I'd say that'd be fine. But if you're going to make it a movie, which is, if you get Steven Soderbergh on there, I'm assuming this was a movie. This was a one. And this is why I was saying, like, you don't make this movie to lay the foundation for Rey, like for all these different movies. I'm saying lay the foundation of how she should be treating the Jedi in the, going forward, and how she'll be kind of being acting a little bit like, not like narratively from a story standpoint, but from a character standpoint of like where she's going to be by the end of that movie will set up how she's going to be later on in her movie, which is that ever going to happen? I don't think so. And what's
Oh,
potentially
it's a
what
lot.
her, I
I think
mean, at
it's
this
a lot.
point, I
I mean,
I don't,
you
who
have people
knows?
clamoring for Ben Solo. You have like this. You're seeing like there's a real clamoring for sequel trilogy characters, especially Ben
No,
Solo.
but
You're not
Kimberg,
having a
but
Ben Solo movie without Rey, and I also think that you're not having a Rey movie without Ben Solo at this point. Like I think that those
I
two
mean, that'd be
characters are
rad.
tied
I would
to the
love
hip,
that.
and
I
I
would
think
love
those two
that.
characters are tied to the hip, and I'd argue that the only reason why people were speculating otherwise was because, like you mentioned before, I think we all assumed that Adam Driver was done with Star Wars as soon as he finished wrapping up filming for Rise of Skywalker. He was like, all right, I'm good. I'll move on. But after all this time, it turns out that of all three of them, he was the one immediately trying to get back in the game, trying to get back into it. And so I just have a hard time seeing them not finding a way to make this happen. And so, like, my tinfoil hat, like, conspiracy theory
Put it
is
on.
part
Let's
of the
do it.
real reason why this Rey movie has stalled out completely is
I'm with
because
you on
they
this one, I
are
think.
trying to rework this now and rework this
Mhm.
completely to make the hunt for Ben Solo happen, but not the hunt for Ben Solo. Like, I think they're trying to rework this Rey movie into like a mesh of what were we trying to do here, rework the hunt for Ben Solo into it. Because like someone asked me and on News That Live, they said like, what percentage chance do you think that the hunt for Ben Solo has of getting revived? And I was really surprised. Like Miguel asked, he said he thinks 30 to 40% at this point. Like he thinks there's a really good chance that
Yeah,
they
I think it's a
actually
good chance.
reverse course. I just don't see it happening. But what I do see happening is, hey, we're going to do that, but we're not going to call it that anymore because, I
Sure.
think the
Yeah.
Disney overlords are like, we're not going to cave in to the fan pressure, right? But I think that's maybe part of why this Rey movie stalled out so much is, hey, we're going to pause on this. We're going to rework this. We need a new writer. Let's rework this to bring back Ben Solo because Adam Driver still is ready to do this and we're going to get the script going. And I
Mhm.
think it's not a coincidence that we haven't heard from that from a while. And suddenly this is starting, to come out right as the window for them to probably get the next movie going. Because I think they had that Rey movie going. And then once they, I think, started to realize this is going to come out and we want to do this again, let's pause this. Sean Levy, you're ready to go. Ryan Gosling really wants to do this. We can fast track that movie because that all happened. It was really weird. Remember, it was like the Ray movies got this writer. We have this going. And then boom, out of nowhere, it said, okay, that's stalled. Sean Levy, boom, you're in. Like, we're going to fast track this. And to me, it screams we're fast tracking this because we're going to take our time and get the other one right.
Okay, so you know me, I love my conspiracies and my theories and whatever.
This is a
And who
fun one.
knows? This is a fun one. I think, okay, first of all, let's look at the facts. First of all, okay, of Ben Solo. Why? It's not, it was just a one-off interview thing. This has been a strategic, more information's being brought on. It went Adam Driver first, then Soderbergh, and they keep dropping. And then you have like the I'm not sure if the writers spoke out yet, but like
Right.
one
Well,
of the
then
people,
suddenly you have this is who wrote it. This is who developed this. This is how
and
much
then
it
you have,
cost.
yeah, and then you also had the person who did like a special, like, drawing or the art, some of the production ideas. They're like, this movie was sick. I mean, there is a strategy going on right now. That is a absolute fact. If anyone denies that, is not looking at the reality of the situation. Like, there is I think anyone being honest, being intellectually honest here, can look at and say these people they're trying to stir up a commotion. They are
At
trying
the
to get
very
fans
least,
in a
they're trying
tizzy.
to say, what is the interest level here? Test
Exactly.
the
At
water.
the
At the
at the
very
very
least.
least. At the very least. So that's interesting. Why are they doing that right now? Why not last year? Why not 2 years before? Why not right after 2021? Because obviously this Ray movie or whatever is in like limbo. Because I think, like you said, there's blood in the water, so to speak, of like there's an opportunity. We might be able to get this thing in, because I think there's because Kinberg's brought on. We don't know what's, and like I think Kinberg's probably, his movie's probably gonna be done. Like, Kinberg is he's an efficient writer and producer. He's gonna get his stuff done. Like
That
that, I
one felt
believe.
very real. And then Kennedy, in that interview she had earlier in the year, she went out of her way to mention that, he's presenting his draft for his trilogy over the summer and they're excited to get to work on that. Like, that one feels like she's not going to say that in an interview with that much confidence if she's not pretty much locked in. Like, this
Right.
one's going to happen.
Yeah. So I say that. So I think probably, I'm not sure if how much Kimberg's on this. I'd be awesome to know if Kimberg was in on it too. But like, and said like, yeah, let's do it. Let's see if we can make this movie. I'll tailor around my story, whatever.
Yeah.
I like to think that was the case. It's possible. I mean, they all know each other. I mean, Kimberg and Soderbergh probably know Soderbergh and all that stuff. Whatever. So I say all that because I think they see an opportunity that this could be made now. And that's why they're pushing it right now. I think that's why. And I think that's because I think the Ray movie, whatever that movie was going to be, is just not, it's not materializing the way they all wanted it to, what they being Kathleen Kennedy and whatever. And because of that reason, there's an opportunity to, like you said, make that Ray movie kind of be that Ben Solo movie, put Ray back in that movie, set up kind of like a bow on the sequel trilogy, and also use that as a springboard into probably Simon Kinberg's movies later on, which she'll be in as well, that you can maybe even have Ben Solo take a part in, whether it be a Force Ghost or whatever, So I think that's what's going on here. There's right now an opportunity for this movie to be made, and they're using this opportunity to see, can they force Disney to like reconsider their ideas,
And that's
because
the key point too, because this isn't like one of those projects that we find like Variety releases in like an article saying that Adam Driver, was secretly working on The Hunt for Ben Solo, and we're like, oh man, that would have been nice. No, this is Adam Driver telling us that we had a production timeline, we were ready to go, and then him and then Soderbergh confirmed Kennedy, Carrie Beck, Filoni, all were ready to go. They all loved it. They greenlit it. Like, this was nothing to do with Lucasfilm saying no, or the whole creative differences that we've heard so many times. Like, this one was different. It was literally, we supposedly from these, from Driver and Soderbergh saying this. They have, I mean, I don't really know what reason they have to lie about this. Is that Bob Iger Alan Bergman, they said no, they were done. And there's, the talk about, was this politically motivated, all of this. But at the end of the day, if Lucasfilm was on board for this, and I would assume that they still were be on board for this, years later, I'm
Mhm.
sure. And I'm
Mhm.
sure that if Adam Driver's speaking about this and he's talking about how cool it was, I'm sure that he would love to get back into it, right? And the key here is the Disney overlords, first of all, should not have final say in creative ideas coming from Lucasfilm. Like, I don't think that that should be a thing. But the real thing is their whole, all they care about at the end of the day probably is how much money is this movie going to make us
Mhm.
in the end of the day. And at the time, they're so reactionary. They're like, how could Ben Solo be alive? Is probably just jargon for people are very divided on the sequel trilogy. We don't really want to
Exactly.
deals in that. But if what we've seen right now is any indication of where this is going,
They're
the
wrong.
story is not, they're wrong about that. This story is not
Mhm.
going to go away. There's no way that for the premieres of Mandalorian and Grogu, that they're not going to just be asked over and over, like Kennedy, Filoni, like over and over about the hunt for Ben Solo. Like that might take over the
Absolutely.
movie itself. And so I don't think it's
It very
going
well
away.
could.
And I really think that this could happen.
No, I'm 100%. I think Miguel is on the money. Actually, I think 40% is probably a good number, which is a pretty good chance. I mean, to be honest,
I'll take
you
it.
know, yeah, here's the thing. You, they're like I said, just the fact they're pushing it right now is reason enough to make me think like they see an opportunity. The second thing I would say is straight up Disney slash Bob Iger. They live in freaking fear
Mm-hmm.
right now, Star Wars. They are so scared of screwing up Star Wars again, and
They've been scared since 27 or well, yeah, 2017. They've been scared.
well, see, I disagree with that because I think if you because as someone who's analyzed, I feel like I've gone through all the interviews of Lucas after he sold it to Disney and all the things of like with Bob Iger in his book, all the excerpts that they put out, from that and everything. To me, I don't think so. I think they were confident, overconfident,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what led to their overconfidence was their weakness, and it
Well,
had
I guess
immediate
2018
returns.
would be post TLJ, which we differ on that, but I think that they've just been living in fear ever since the divide.
No,
At
yeah,
that
yeah,
point,
yeah.
they're reactionary all over the place.
That's
They
yeah,
they
good
don't know
point.
what to
Yeah,
do. Yeah.
and I think the problem is they're not confident in whatever they're doing, and especially and it makes that would make sense if it was 2021 if they were like no because they're so like that's so too fresh off of
Mhm.
that, like we can't do that. Oh my god, there's so many
Right.
YouTubers that talk about it. I think now because there's been so much time has passed, and I think that just seeing the response, like, I don't think I've ever seen Star Wars fans more united than ever. To be quite
It's
honest,
been
Tyler, like,
it's been
I
a long time. I as
long time, man.
2015, 20 it's been a decade, 2015, like
Seriously,
before as The Force Awakens was coming out.
I've not seen Star Wars fans this united over anything in a long, long time, and I think that in and of itself should show the Disney brass that they have to really reconsider this potentially. Like,
Mhm.
if it's how what does it mean? Because, and I think that's where whether or not Bob Iger was at this point was just like 2021 was just so in fear. They were so overconfident with like we know Star Wars, we know what Star Wars fans want more than
Mhm.
George Lucas did, because he did the prequel trilogy. No one, and then they felt what Lucas went through in the sequel trilogy in their
Yeah.
own ways and their own mistakes. Now they're like, what do we do? And there's no they lack confidence. Look at John Favreau and Dave Filoni. They're Favreau is confident. They were confident when they're and I'm not
He's the
saying
only
to an
one that can
extent.
make a movie.
Well, I mean, well, yeah, but like they were confident in their story.
Right.
They know that. And I think that's what I've been saying for so long is like have like people who are convicted over their story. Like They're like, yes, this story is good. We love what we wrote here. We love what we came up with. We think we can make a great movie here. Like everyone thinks the movie's
Well, and
good,
that's
but
the
like
problem
be
that they've been
confident.
running into is even if you don't like this project, it's the reactionary backtracking that they do, trying to figure out what, like, oh, there's a big uproar at TLJ where we're gonna make sure episode 9 is opposite of TLJ as we can. Like we're gonna do like the
Yeah.
exact opposite. And then guess what happened? People are like, oh, you see, you backtracked, like you completely changed the script and it doesn't make any sense. Or oh, Solo, doesn't look like it's going very good. We gotta bring in new, director. Ron Howard's gonna save the day. Oh, Solo didn't make as much money as we want. So we gotta change that Kenobi movie we were thinking about doing. That's gotta be a series now. Like we can't possibly do that. We got to go to streaming, and then oh my gosh, everyone's on streaming now. We got to get back into our movies. The streaming's not panning out for us, and it's just constant. Like, or we got to bring on this director to this movie. They have a dud somewhere else. Oh, we got to backtrack. We can't be on that director anymore.
Yeah.
So it's just a
Oh
constant
God.
a
Ugh.
constant shift. But in last thing here before we get out, just in a one last like a little bit, you know, what do you think if this movie were to be made,
Mhm.
and we're playing a hypothetical game right now. Let's say
Okay.
it's a good movie. Like this is a movie that is genuinely like there's a really good
Mhm.
story and fans, universally like there's never going to be a universal thing with Star Wars, but word of mouth is good to where like, we're not seeing that what we've been seeing. Like this is more like 2015 Force Awakens vibes, like where
Sure.
there's a lot of positivity going on. What does that
Yeah.
mean for Star Wars for the next 10 years?
Yeah. I mean, I think that for me, it only gives more credence to the example of you need to find writers and directors who have
Yeah.
visions for the project. Not you
Mhm.
had the vision for the project, but like for the most part, unless you have like a Filoni who's like, I created this, like someone like that, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
only difference that other than like, hey, Patty Jenkins, what kind of movie do you want to do? You want to do this
Yeah.
kind of story? Cool, let's do it. Like, no, like let's have them develop the story, get the script, get everything, or not even the script, get me the
Mhm.
outline. Everything's gonna go. I want to see something you love and are convicted to want them to do. That's what you want. That's what you want to see. And I think that that's what Adam Driver and Steven Soderbergh are this whole thing kind of is like is that idea of someone pitching the Lucasfilm like, hey, I have this
Yeah.
idea. Like instead of like, can you have any ideas? Like, no, I have an idea. Like, here's this idea for Ben Solo, this character that I play that I love. Let's embrace that and maybe not, it doesn't have to, we can develop it further. Maybe if you don't love everything that they have done, you can
Mhm.
develop it. Maybe you can like,
Yeah.
we can compromise or something, whatever. Like, because I think that the passion of that stuff shines through majority of the time for the most part.
Mhm.
And I think when that shines through, there's money to be made there because people are going to want to see that genuine, like the
Mhm.
genuineness or the authenticity of those things. And I think that you know, we need more of that in Star Wars because I think the more you have that, the better stories we're going to get overall because people actually care about them instead of just like, oh, it's just, here's what they wanted me to write a movie, so here's a
Right.
movie.
Yeah.
It's like no, like, I love the story, so I want to make the story. Like
Mhm.
that's what I want. I don't want to just let's make money. Let's just make us all movie. Which again, those can be good. Those can be good too. But even Rogue One was a pitch.
Mhm.
It was a pitch from the what's his name from the ILM. It was like, well, why don't we make a movie about let's make this, and that turned into Rogue One and then Andor. And look, there are returns from that you're reaping from, Whereas Solo, which I love, was more of just like was a preconceived like
Mhm.
idea, and it lacks, people are is in. I love it, but that's for
Mhm.
different reasons. But I will say that I think there's a reason because it lacks um, a true authentic uh, story that needed to be told. If that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
I like what we got. I think it's good what we got, but it's not as authentic as like as a backbone like Rogue One
Right.
or,
That makes sense.
or whatever. You get what I'm saying? So, or Mandalorian, or something like that. So,
Mhm.
but yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens, man. I'm excited to figure out what the future holds for us in Star Wars because I felt 2 weeks ago that the future for Star Wars was pretty cut and dry, pretty crystal clear. It was all right. We
Mhm.
got to see how the Mandalorian and Grogu does, and we have to see how Starfighter does, and then we'll go from there. Now it's very much like who knows what the heck's going to be taking place anytime soon, but we will talk about it, I'm sure, over the next few years. Take care. Thanks for hopping on. Go ahead and follow Star Wars Newsnet wherever you can. Paul, go ahead and plug the comic binge real fast. I know you want to do that.
Yeah, go check out the Comic Binge on YouTube. We just did a show about The Crow. We've got more kind of independent comics we're talking about this week. A very good comic called My Favorite Things is Monsters. A great comic. Go check it out. And then next month, got some cool guests planned on coming on. If you're a football fan, a YouTube football fan specifically, you may be interested in who I have on next week. We'll just leave
Oh,
it
nice.
there. So
Awesome.
yeah. So pretty excited. Just got confirmed today, actually. So I think so. Pretty excited about that. I've got also the Legion show, the Legion of Superheroes ongoing show with Joe Coralla. Excuse me. He's coming back on to do that, so that's a lot of fun. So a lot of great stuff planned for as always for the Comic Binge. So yeah, go
That's
check it
awesome.
out.
All right, everyone. We will see you later. See you next time. For Light and Life, remember that we are all on the hunt for Ben Solo right now.